Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel on Vedic Astrology. Today we'll be discussing about hearing problem. How to see if a person has hearing problem or is deaf or is partially deaf in respect to Vedic Astrology. Now when we look into hearing problem or when we go and find out if a person has hearing problem or not, with Vedic Astrology, two houses are very important. House number 3 and house number 11, particularly house number 3, because house number 3 controls your hearing and it also controls your right ear. The 11th house is also important because 11th house controls your left ear. So when your third house is afflicted or your third house lord is afflicted, or for that matter 11th house is afflicted or 11th house lord is afflicted, there is a possibility, there is only a possibility that the person is deaf or has hearing problem. Why not for sure and only a possibility? Because third house represents a lot of things, right? You're aware the third house represents a lot of things, 11th house represents a lot of things, so not necessarily that aspect of your life is afflicted, or that house, that if third house is afflicted doesn't necessarily mean that your hearing is affected. It can be something else which is affected. But very clear indication, when you see a chart of a deaf person or a person having hearing problem, you will see either his third house and third lord is afflicted, or both third house and 11th house is afflicted, or 11th house and 11th lord is afflicted. Also Jupiter can be afflicted. Jupiter, why? Because Jupiter is the karaka of hearing. Jupiter controls your hearing. One of the things that Jupiter controls is your hearing power. So if Jupiter is afflicted, there is possibility that you have ear problem. Let's go to some of the charts. What I did is I researched, I did analyzed around 10 to 12 charts, from Astrodata Bank. I took the database, researched on 12 charts of people who had hearing problem or were deaf, and very clearly almost in all the charts I see third house is afflicted or 11th house is afflicted, or both third and 11th house with their lords are afflicted. Also in some cases Jupiter is afflicted. Let us see, you know let us look at the first example. Leo ascendant, third house ruled by Venus. Venus is in the ninth house, aspected by Saturn. Saturn is the sixth house lord. Now, what is sixth house? Sixth house is the house of disease. So, where is Saturn placed? Saturn is placed in the third house, and it aspect the ninth house where Venus is present. Clearly tells you that third house is afflicted and the third house lord is also afflicted. Not only Saturn, Ketu also has a ninth aspect on Venus. Similarly, Rahu has a ninth aspect on the third house. So very, very clearly, this tells you that your third house is afflicted and the third house lord is afflicted. Now here, what we also see is that Jupiter is present in 12th house. Though it is exalted, 12th house is still not a very good position for Jupiter. For that matter, any other planet, because 12th house is a bad house. I mean, not necessarily a bad house. There are great aspects of 12th house as well. But generally, when you look into 12th house, it talks about loss, it talks about hospitalization and so on. So Jupiter is, asylum and so on. So Jupiter is in 12th house, and Saturn has a 10th aspect on Jupiter. Now let's come to the second chart. Now in the second chart, again Leo ascendant, where is the third lord, third house lord Venus placed? It is placed in the 10th house in the axis of Rahu and Ketu. Okay. Also Saturn, the 6th house lord, the lord of the house of disease, is in the 8th house, and it aspects Venus, third aspect Venus. Now clearly tells you that the third house is, the third house lord is afflicted. We can also see that the third house has Mars. Mars is a natural malefic planet. So Mars is, Mars is in the third house, which can clearly tell you that the third house is also to certain extent afflicted. Now let's go to the next chart. Now in this chart clearly tells you that the third house is afflicted, right? The sixth house lord, which is the house of disease, Saturn, is in the third house. Mars is in the third house. Both of them are in the third house. Also, Saturn has a third aspect on Venus and Jupiter. Venus is the third house lord. Jupiter is the planet which controls your hearing. So clearly it tells you the third house lord is afflicted. Your Venus is afflicted, which is the third house lord. The third house is afflicted, and Jupiter is also afflicted. Now here, 11th house. When you look into 11th house, so the 11th house lord is conjunct with sun, so it's combust. So to certain degree, you can tell that the 11th house lord is also slightly afflicted, because it also has an aspect of, the Mercury is the 11th house lord, which also has an aspect from Rahu, the 5th aspect from Rahu. Let's come to another chart. Now in this chart, the 11th house, look at the 11th house. The 11th house lord is Mars. The third house lord is Sun. Now 11th house lord is in conjunct with Sun. So Mars is combust. Now Sun is the third house lord. The third house lord is conjunct with, with Mars, which is also the house, sixth house lord, which sixth house is the house of disease. So it tells you the third house lord is afflicted, the 11th house lord is also afflicted. Saturn has an aspect, the third aspect, on both Sun and Mars, alright, and also aspecting the 11th house. Let's come to the next chart. Now in this chart, the third house has Mars and Rahu, two malefic in the third house. Clearly tells you that the third house is afflicted. Saturn is there in the sixth house of disease, and Saturn aspect, Saturn is the 11th house lord. So 11th house lord is in the house of disease, right? So tells you that the 11th house is afflicted, the 11th house lord is also afflicted, and also Saturn aspects the third house. Okay, so there are three malefic aspecting or placed in the third house, right? So this clearly tells you that the third house and 11th house both are afflicted. Also your 11th house lord is in the sixth house, which is the house of disease. Now let's come to another chart. Now in this chart, again, you clearly see that the 11th house lord, which is Mercury, is conjunct with Sun and Rahu in the third house, right? So third house is both Sun and Rahu. Also what you see here is Jupiter is in the 12th house, and Jupiter is aspected by Saturn, right? Saturn is the house, is the lord of the house of disease. So clearly it tells you that in this chart also, the 11th house, the third house, the 11th house lord, even the third house lord has an aspect from Saturn. Third house lord is Venus, which is the 7th aspect from Saturn. Saturn is the 6th house lord, the lord of the house of disease. So clearly it tells you this is a classic case where the third house lord, the 11th house lord, and Jupiter, all of them are afflicted. So when you see all these charts, you can clearly tell that these are chart of people who are suffering from ear problem, who are either deaf or who are partially deaf. All these data are available in astro.com. Go to that, search for these people. You will clearly see that these are the people who are suffering from, or who were suffering from, hearing problem. So clearly it tells you when you see these charts that there is a pattern. There is a pattern which tells you whether a person is having, or there's a possibility that the person is having hearing problem or not. So thank you for watching this video. If you like my video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.